It's okay.
All right. So here is Philip Rasmussen's P36. You would recognize this from the American starter pack in War Thunder. Here's Rasmussen right here in his pajamas, getting into the P36 to fight off the Japanese attackers. He did wake up on that Sunday morning just to fight them off. He was one of the few people to get in the air, shoot down people, and survive. And actually, this plane here was not Rasmussen's. It actually was the first P-36 built for the U.S. Air Force. It is the serial number 1 P-36. As you can see, it's got its 2 guns right up there in the nose, which would be a design that quickly died out during the war as they moved to the wingtip guns. Over here is a rarity. There's not many of these surviving. I think there's 3 or 4 of these. This is the P-35 built by Seversky. This would go on to be the forefather of the P-43, which would then be become the P-47. So this is basically one of the first aircraft in the P-47's lineage. As you can see, it's definitely a Razorback. It's got quite the razor on the back there. You can see how this wing design sort of morphed into the P-47 as the semi-elliptical. They lengthen the fuselage. They'd stick a big old turbo supercharger underneath.
It looks really similar to the P-43.
Yeah, it looks a lot closer to the P-43, but then the P-43 would eventually morph even further. I would like to see this in game. It could go in the American or Swedish tree. They both used them.
Just play China, bro.
It'd be a fun little event vehicle. The Chinese never used the P-35. They only used the P-43.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was a P-43.
Nah, I don't think there's any P-43 surviving. I heard rumors that one was dug up in Australia years ago, but nothing ever came of it.
Oh, there's
over here.
Before we continue, there was a question from Avi that if you know what was the most flight aircraft for the USAF during the First World War. For the US Air Force.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm assuming it would be one of the Newports, because those were very popular aircraft. But it's either going to be a Newport or a Spad. I'm not sure which variant. I know the Spad 13 was one of the most produced biplanes of all time. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was the Spad 13. But I'm not sure of the answer myself.
Okay, there you go.
Here, I'm going to flip this around this way. So here we go. Here's the B18 Bolo with his big old nose right there. Just a big old honker right there. You can actually walk under and look up in the bomb bay if you want. So as you can see, you have mounting points right along here where you'd stick the bombs. And we can actually, hold up, we can actually look up in there and see the rear gun. This would actually retract up and down, I believe, as needed in flight, which I find to be a fascinating idea. And these were used as maritime bombers early in the war, and it actually does have depth charges on either side of it. Right here, they were used for hunting submarines, but ultimately by the time the war broke out, most of these had been retired or converted into cargo aircraft, and a lot more would be retired and converted as the war went on. Over here we have a A6 M20, the bane of many War Thunder players. This one was actually recovered and restored from Indonesia in the early 2000s. So it did fly, it did get shot down. You got the little folding wingtips are folded up over here. It's got some Japanese writing on the back. This is a rarity. There's not a ton of zeros out there, so it is always cool to see one here. It is a gorgeous aircraft, and I find its capabilities worthy of respect, I guess you could say, even if they were
On
an
the
opposing aircraft. Yeah.
Yeah.
Over here we have a P40E, the Warhawk. As you can see, it does have 350s in the wing, and then 350s on the other wing. It's got the shark face on it. It is painted up as a Flying Tiger aircraft used in China to fight off the Japanese. It's actually worth noting, I don't know how many people know this, but the P40 came from the P36. And if you look at it from the back, you cut off the nose here, it does sort of look just like the P36 from the engine back, I should say. Which is always interesting. We do have some Flying Tiger patches and uniforms here. I always like the tiger wearing the Uncle Sam hat.
Yeah, these are some of the volunteers here in China, right?
Yep. So back there we saw the Eagle squadrons. The Flying Tigers were the same idea, but fighting for nationalist China instead of the British. Here's our B-25. This B-25 is done up as a Doolittle Raider. It was not a Doolittle Raider. None of those survived, but it is replicating one. So it does have a lot of its guns removed. It has its turrets removed. This short little guy right here is Doolittle himself. We stuffed him and put him on display. Now, this is it's done up as a carrier deck right here. You can see that here's an engine cutaway of one of the 2600 engines that the B-25 used. But if we come around to the back, I always love this attention to detail. We went full replica on this as a Doolittle Raider. In the back here, it doesn't have machine guns. It just has painted broomsticks. Just like the actual Doolittle Raider. And that was done to scare off any Japanese while removing the weight of the guns. We actually do have an extensive Doolittle Raider display. Richard Cole, who was the co-pilot of Doolittle himself on the raid, who died last year, was the last living Doolittle Raider. He was from Dayton, so he really loved having a chance to come back here every year to meet up with his fellow Doolittle Raiders, and because of that, we have a wonderful, extensive Doolittle Raider display. This right here, there's a cup for everyone who was on the Doolittle raids. They would meet up every year, and when someone died, they would flip a cup upside down, and they had an agreement that when there were only two left, they would open this 1896 cognac from Hennessy and have a drink. They did that a few years back, and ever since we've had all of this on display here.
Good Henny.
Good old Hennessy. We even, for a short time, we had those in the gift shop. We had Hennessy in the gift shop because of that. We have some captured Japanese art here. Over here, we have the remains of a Japanese balloon bomb. The Japanese decided that the best way to bomb America in World War II would be to float a bunch of bombs by balloon into the mainland U.S. Ultimately, they only succeeded once when they killed a family of 3 on a picnic in Oregon, which is unfortunate. But ultimately, we actually kept putting out radio transmissions saying they were super successful, so the Japanese would just keep wasting their time on it. But at the end of the day, there was only one actual casualty from them. Over here, this is the drivetrain of a P-39. As you can see, you have an Allison 1710 engine right here, hooked up to a long drive shaft that would go through the P39 right here. And then you have the cannon is up here. So you've got your rounds coming in, being auto-loaded, fired through the propeller here, while the drive shaft is driving the propeller around it. Here is our P39 that I just showed you. Gorgeous aircraft. It's done up as P39 in Alaska. As you can see, this one doesn't have any wing cannons. It's only got 2 in the nose up top here, 250s up here, and the 37 right here. This is one of my favorite planes in War Thunder. I always love seeing it. But yes, this is a P39 Q. We used to have a P63 right next to it, but it was ultimately removed, at least temporarily, as there were more important aircraft to put on display. Over here, this is a why am I blanking on the name?
The Avenger.
What is it? I'm trying to think.
TVF.
It's an 824, but it's
Oh.
it's got the Air Force has a different name for it. I never remember the name for it. It's a Dauntless, but it's not called the Dauntless by the Air Force. But as you can see, it's got its little bomb tossing arm in the bottom there. Yeah, 2 wing mounted bombs. Ultimately, dive bombers did see use in the Pacific, but they didn't catch on as much as they did for the Navy. But it is still a wonderful aircraft. I do love the A-24. Over here we do have some training aircraft. These were used for training on twin engine aircraft, because once you graduate from one engine aircraft, you have to learn how to fly multi-engine aircraft before you can be put on a bomber. So you would just get into these, learn how to fly on those, and then move on. This over here is the AT-11. This was used for training on bombing. As you can see, it does have a little bomb bay down here. And you just drop small little dummy bombs from the bottom. And you know, that's pretty much how every bombardier learned to bomb. That's how every bomber pilot learned to fly. So it was a really important aircraft if you were accepted into the 8th Air Force or the 9th Air Force or anyone that had a large bomber component. This over here is the beginning of our Tuskegee Airmen display. This is a basic trainer that the Tuskegee Airmen would have used. If we walk over here, this is a Steerman Pt13. It was used by many pilots in the war, but by the time it got to the Tuskegee Airmen, it was becoming outdated. But the Tuskegee Airmen largely got hand-me-down aircraft, so they were stuck training on this. We do have a number of uniforms and patches and items from the Tuskegee Airmen. For anyone who doesn't know, the Tuskegee Airmen was an all-black aerial fighting unit in World War II. It was started sort of to prove that black people couldn't fly. It ended up proving the opposite. The Tuskegee Airmen, if you've ever seen Red Tails, you'll know. If you've ever read about them, you'll know. Ended up being one of the most effective units of the Air Force during World War II.
They shot down a few 262s, I'm pretty sure. That wasn't just like a movie thing.
Yes, yeah, they were extremely effective against 262s, along with just about any other Germans they came across. Over here, we have our B-24, the Strawberry Bitch. This used to be a skinning game, but it was removed. I don't know why. I guess it's just not PG enough. I do wish I had this skin. It is a wonderful aircraft. and the kids always giggle at the name when they come across it.
I can see what they removed.
Yeah. The Strawberry Bitch is a wonderful, wonderful example of a desert-based B-24. As you can see, it did go on a few bombing missions. I believe it was 11 or 12.
That decal is
Hold on.
also
11.
in the game. I think it's the 160 bomber group, something like that.
Yes, yeah, the decal is in the game. The skin used to be in the game. I wish I had bought it, but here I am without it. So over here, we do have a Beaufighter Mark One. This is the Nightmare. It was used as a night fighter by the U.S. Air Force. I believe this was one of the first night. Let's see. Should say right here. Yeah, it shot down a AC-111 in September of 1944, carrying German officers. As you can see, it has 3 kills to its name. It's got its 4 7.7s and its 4 20s right here. And then there's 4 7.7s on that side. It's a wonderful early bow fighter. I love seeing it all the time. It's one of my favorite planes in War Thunder. Over here, we have an MC-200 Saeta. This is another. I believe this is the only other Italian aircraft in the museum, along with the CA-26 that we saw in the World War I hangar. As you can see, it's got the little open top there. Fun little aircraft to fly. But it is a rarity. I think there's only 2 or 3 of these left in the world.
Someone is asking, all of the planes seem to be in good condition. Do you repair bullet holes and things before putting them out?
If there were bullet holes in them, I believe most of those will be left unless they were repaired during wartime. The museum does try and preserve everything as much as is as they can. So I believe if there's bullet holes on it, if they weren't patched up during the war, they're not patched up now. As you can see, we have a P-51 here. This is the Shimmy 4, or this is painted up as the Shimmy 4, which was an ace aircraft during the war. This was actually the last P-51 in service with the U.S. Air Force. It was retired in the late 70s or early 80s, I believe. It was being used as a test aircraft, among other things. But yeah, it's a standard P-51D. It's got the bubble canopy. That's about all I can really say about it. It's a wonderful aircraft. Pretty much everyone knows what the Mustang is.
Such a looker.
We have our armed Spitfire over here. We have 2 Spitfires at the museum. This is the first one you'll see. This is a Mark 5C. As you can see, it's got its cannons right here. It's got its big old turbocharger intake in the bottom there. I don't know how to feel about it. Seeing a Spitfire and mid-war Air Force camo is a little weird to me, but it is what it is. It's nice to have a Spitfire here. It is a wonderful aircraft. I always love seeing them fly in War Thunder. Over here is our A36 Apache. As you can see, it's got its 2 wing cannons. It's got its 2 nose cannons and 2 wing cannons on the other side. It does have its bombs. We look down here. You can see its air brakes. I have heard a rumor that the Air Force pilots would tie down those air brakes because they had a habit of popping out at high speed, and they weren't a fan of that. So they would just tie that down and dive bomb.
Also, I missed it earlier, but someone was asking if the Beaufighter was used by the U.S. Air Force or it only had the decal on it, like the roundel.
The Beaufighter was Beaufighter, or however you want to pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, me neither. So I'm just guessing.
It was used by
Beaufighter. God damn it.
it was used by the U.S. Air Force, not heavily, but it was used by the Air Force as a night fighter. There was a lot of sharing of aircraft at the time. You'll see a lot of like for example, our Spitfire was low use by the Air Force, but it was used by them. Up here is the most famous aircraft at the museum, the Memphis Bell. It was the first B-17 to get 25 kills and come home. 25 kills was important because, or sorry, not 25 kills, 25 missions. That's important because 25 missions is a tour of duty during that time. So if you got 25 missions under your belt, you got to go home. So these are the first B-17 pilots we sent over. They completed 25 missions, not getting shot down, and made it home. And eventually they went on the war bond tour, which only furthered his fame, leading to 2 movies being made about this plane. This is also our strategic bomber exhibit. There's a lot to go through here, so I'm not going to go through all of it. But there is one thing I want to find. If it's here. Oh, they might have moved it from display. Hold on. Yeah, they moved it from display. There used to be a sidearm that the pilots would carry on them. And they had one that had been hit by a fragmenting shell. Flak shell. in air. And it saved him from getting pierced in the side by it. But I don't see it on display right now, so oh well. But the Memphis Bell display is gorgeous. As you can see, it is in the middle of a bombing run. Or that's how it's displayed. We can look up into that bomb bay right here. Check it out. You can see the bomb racks on the side here. You load up the bombs on the side and then plop them out. If you wanted to get from the front to the back, you'd have to climb along this little central area right here, which does scare me a little bit. I've done it before. I wouldn't want to do it in flight. We have a gun turret right here. Let me look for it. Sometimes I spot it quickly, sometimes I don't. There is a giant chunk of this ball turret taken out where it got hit by a flak round. And it's right next to the window.
Jesus.
Let me see. No,
Also,
I can't.
Some people are mentioning in the chat that this is a huge bomb bay compared to the earlier bombers that we saw, like the B18.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is it's a little bit shorter, but it's a lot deeper, and you can fit a lot more into it. Which really makes the difference between a strategic bomber like this and what was more of a tactical bomber like the B18. Here we have a German Flak 88. You can see this one has a lot of kills to its name by the stripes on the barrel. If we come over here, we can look at the size of one of the Flak 88 rounds, which is just a big old mama right there. And you can imagine if you're flying over Germany, you'd have 20, 30 of these bad boys shooting at you at any time at the very least. And it would be just terrifying, I can imagine. But they still did it. They still went for it, and that's how the B-17 right here got its 25 missions in. If I come over here, so this up here it's bombing missions. The ones with the yellow stars are missions where it was the overall flight lead. The red ones, it was its squad lead, I believe. So it did actually serve as it got farther into its battles. You can see it got more and more responsibility put on it. And there's the Memphis Bell here. On this side, she's got a red skirt on. And if we come over to this side, she's got a blue skirt on. That is very much a decal I'd like to have in game. I'm not sure if it'll ever get added. We do have a Memphis Bell decal in, but it's for the fake Memphis Bell in. It's for the fake Memphis Bell in Britain. They have one at the American Air Museum in Duxford.
Pascusen is asking, was the B-17 sold to the international market?
The B-17s were sold to other countries. The one we had before this was named Shoo 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 Baby. And her story is she was actually sold to Sweden and used as a civilian airliner for a number of years before the Air Force Museum reacquired her. I don't know if I don't think it was ever that widely used as a actual bomber by other countries, but it was sold to the international market afterwards in a few cases.
Yeah, there you go.
Here we have a BF-109 G10. Thing I always like about this is you can look at it and just see all these little bumps on it where they've started adding stuff and changing stuff around. You can see sort of just how much they had to upgrade this airframe to keep it competitive and keep it flying, which is always one of the things I think didn't help the Germans that much. Is they basically avoided innovation for a good while, and then avoided making new aircraft for a good while, and then eventually went from this to the 262. Because I think the BF-110 or the BF-109 platform, they kept going for a little too long to stay competitive by the end of things, if that makes sense. But as you can see, it's got its big old nose cannon right here. That is a 108, I believe, on the G10. It looks like we've removed its guns up there. I don't see any barrel shrouds, but there's the 131s would be up there. But yeah, that's this 109 is a very gorgeous example of a BF-109, and it is the G10, which is really cool to see. If we look over, hold on, let's go this way. If we look over here, we have our P-38 Lightning. This is a, I believe, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the name of it. I can't think of it off the top of my head. It is the top of the line, that's right. So the top of the line was a P-38L. As you can see here, it is a wonderful example of one. It's got the 3 downward facing intakes there, whereas other ones you'll have the Y, or you'll have various intake shapes. I do like the P-38. I used to hate this plane. I thought it looked ugly. I thought it didn't look great, but P-38 is a really fun aircraft to fly. Yeah, it's a P-38 Lightning. I don't. That's the thing, is like some of these planes is just like, what can I say about them? You know, it is just a famous plane, I guess.
It is. Those really made a difference.
Oh yeah, the P-38 Lightnings they're exceptional in the Pacific, and then they actually were pretty good escort aircraft for a good while over Italy and over Romania and so on.
Is that the one that intercepted that one Japanese official?
Yeah, I think Yamato, I think it was.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think that was the P-38. I'm pretty sure it was.
I think it was. Maybe some people in the chat know.
But yeah. So over here we have a bubble top P-47, known as 5x5. As you can see, it had three German aircraft kills. It's hard to tell, but it also had a ship kill, and then a bunch of ground vehicle kills and train kills. I'm trying to get a good picture of that, but I don't know if I actually can. But yeah, it's got 3 German flags, and it has a ship right here, and then some flak kills, some ground kills, and the train kill.
Admiral Yamamoto.
But
there it is. Regarding to the P-38.
Yeah. This P-47 was actually flown by the Peruvian Air Force up until like 1981.
Oh,
and then it was returned to the museum. Here's some thick plate steel off of a P-47. As you can see, that would be a fun bit of protection from all the flak and bullets coming at you. It is what made it so survivable. If we come over here, this is our little flak display, our little our little flakman's area. You got your little steel helmet. You got your gunner sights for the Flak 38 here. And actually, this is really cool. This is off of a P-47's 50 cal belt, and it was pierced by a flak round in mid-flight. So it I don't think the gun would have fired that one too well, if I'm being honest. But yeah, it's an interesting little display here. You can imagine being shot at by one of these would not be a good time. If we come over here, this is a B-26 Marauder, the famous B-26 Marauder. I would love to see one of these in game. As you can see, as with most B-26s, they were very heavily used. They saw tons of bombing missions. Compare that to the Memphis Bell over there with their 25 missions on the side there. And then it's like, haha, screw you. And this isn't even the most used one. The most used one is the Flak bait at the Smithsonian, which had some 400 missions? Something crazy like that. As you can see, it has its 50 cal pods right here on the side of the fuselage. They were also used for torpedo missions, which is why we have our Mark 14 here. Or Mark 13. We come over here, we have a bomb cart for hauling bombs up to planes like this. You'd stick it under and then just load the bombs on. We do have a display about Walt Disney, because Disney would make various patches for any air crew that wanted it. So he and his crew would custom design patches for anyone who requested them.
Look at those.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, getting a patch designed by Walt Disney himself of, for example, Dumbo dropping bombs on people would have been very cool at the time. So yeah, they have a video of Walt Disney designing stuff, and they have some drawings there, some original Walt Disney artwork. Which I always think that's really cool. That's a neat little symbol of what people, one of the morale building aspects in World War II. There's the P-38 again. Over here is our C-47 with Wacko glider above it. C-47, also known as the DC-3 in the civilian service, was a very heavily used cargo aircraft during the war. It would carry these gliders right here all across the channel and then drop them off during D-Day. Those gliders could pack howitzers like this, so you could have bikes on it for transportation of heavier equipment.
Was this the one that the paratroopers jumped out of?
Yes, this is the plane that the paratroopers would have jumped out of. If I come back here, you can see that this would be opened up like this, and you'd just be go, 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 and they'd be just jumping out of there. We actually do have, this is a chaplain of the 82nd Airborne who would have jumped. This is the gear of the Pathfinders. These guys would have jumped out first and foremost and set up these beacons right here, and then all the other paratroopers would jump onto those beacons. That actually led to a problem because those paratroopers in D-Day, the beacon guys were dropped off course, so when they set up their beacons, everyone else was off course. So that led to a pretty big issue during the war. During the Battle of D-Day. Over here's the rear of the B-24, the Strawberry Bitch. You can imagine that would not be the fun end to be on if you were a fighter. It doesn't actually have its ball turret in it. The ball turret's actually next to it over there. But normally the ball turret would retract up into the B-24, and then you would bring it out as you needed. Over here we have some Wunderwaffe. We have this is a JB2 Loon, which was a American-produced V1. We produced them after the war for testing purposes, and we actually did put them into service for defense uses. And then we have a V2 rocket right here. This is actually the first man-made vehicle to go in space, the V2. So you can thank the Germans for that, I suppose. Yeah, so we have a V2 rocket. This actually is the original wagon it would come on. They would drive it along into some random Dutch neighborhood, set it up, and then fire it towards London.
Oh no.
Here we have another rare aircraft. This is one of the few remaining Ju-88s in the world. This one, as you can tell, does have Romanian markings. And the reasoning for that is it was a Romanian aircraft. It was flown by a man who decided he's like, I don't want to fight with the Germans anymore. I'm going to defect. He took this to Malta and surrendered.
Good choice.
Yeah, good decision. That means the Brits captured it, and they eventually gave it to the U.S. for testing purposes. As you can see, it does have a Fritz X underneath it. We do actually have some German armament over here if you're interested in checking it out. Don't know how it'll look on the stream, but
it's looking nice from now. Yeah.
We have an MG-17. We have an MG-131. We have a Mark 108 over here. We have some 7.9 machine guns. Yeah, your standard German armament. Oh, and there's the Mark 108 right here, this chunky monkey.
I think same as me, some people were surprised to see a Fritz X in real life.
Oh yeah, Fritz X's are always really cool. I mean, it just looks crazy. Look at that thing. Looks like it's not meant to exist, you know?
Yeah. Or at least not on that period.
Yeah. Over here we have the DH-98 from de Havilland, also known as the Mosquito. This one was a reconnaissance aircraft, which is why it's painted in this grayish blue. This one actually was used in a few movies. Trying to think of which ones it was. I don't know, and it doesn't say on the sign here either. But
Dam Busters might be one.
Maybe. There were a few 60s. I think they're mostly 60s to 80s movies.
Yeah.
We have some parachute flares over here that would have been dropped by various aircraft, as well as a little cart for moving everything around. If we come over here, actually, I'm going to ignore some planes for a minute. This here is a rail car used for the transportation of POWs and concentration camp victims. It was donated by the French to the Air Force Museum. And we actually do have a display over here about German POWs, and they have items that were made by POWs in the camps. This here's a little mouse trap that could capture up to 12 mice at a time. They have a stove that was made of tin cans. Just some really creative and amazing stuff made by people in absolute, some of the worst conditions. Dustpans, rolling pins, stuff to keep your everyday life going. We have wire cutters for escape. We have improvised bellows to build up fires for escape. We have captured stuff from German war camps, or prisoner camps, I should say. Over here, this is all about escape, because there were a lot of escapes from prisoner of war camps. They actually made fake wooden guns to try and scare people off. But yeah, they did everything they could to escape and get back to the fight. They were really impressive. But yeah, they were really they had a lot of ingenuity in those camps, and I just can't imagine what it was like being a prisoner of war.
Yeah.
There's a good view of the Ju-88 again. Over here is our other Spitfire. This is a reconnaissance aircraft, the PR-11, which is why, again, it's painted in that reconnaissance blue color. So you just take these high up in the air and take as many pictures as you could. So that was another use that the Air Force had for them, that we use them more as reconnaissance planes than actual common fighters, We have a 250 kilogram bomb right here. If you wonder what one looks like in real scale, I mean, as you can see, it is rather large. 250 kilograms is a large bomb size. We do have an ME-163 here. This is what was that?
That's a rarity to see one of these.
Oh yeah, there's not a ton of these out there. This one's actually really cool. When it was brought over I believe it was when it was in England, they took it apart and found inside that there was a rock stuck in between the fuel tank and the skin. And the theory is, and it actually had some French writing on it that said, "My heart is not occupied." And the belief is that the prisoner that was forced to make it put the rock in between with the hopes that it would eventually wear down the fuel tank and puncture it. And when that happened, it would blow up the plane. So that's a really interesting story about this specific ME-163 in my mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it does show one of the weaknesses that Germany had in relying on prison labor. Over here we have a BK5 50mm autocannon. This is what you'd see on the one ME-410 and the 262 with the 50mm, obviously. Here is our ME-262, speaking of which. This was captured and brought over during Operation Lusty, when America captured a bunch of German aircraft and brought them over on a carrier. We have a cutaway of the jet engine here. As you can see, this is an axial flow engine. You suck in the air through here, it compresses. Then you go through the combustors, explodes, turns the turbine, comes out here creating a jet of air. The 262 is always a crazy looking aircraft. If you come over to the front, it is a very fat aircraft, actually. I mean, when you look at it from the side, it looks like it's going to be a lot more sleek than this. You know, it's got its big old chunky sides right there. But it was a terrifying aircraft to go up against. Over here we have a Focke-Wulf 190 Dora. So the D model, it's got the long inline engine right here. This is actually a very rare aircraft. There's not many D models out there. Most of them are the radial engine 190. So it's really cool to have one of these, even though I do think it is a very ugly aircraft. It's got that big, long, bumpy nose. But it is what it is. We do have a Ruhrstahl X4, which was an air-to-air missile. You would fire it, and it has two helixes full of fuel, and it would push pistons down those helixes and force the rocket fuel out the back, where it would combust. And then it would be guided by a wire. And then the fuse here is actually tuned to explode when it gets near the sound of a bomber engine, which is a very interesting idea for a proximity fuse.
Never heard about this boy.
If we come over here, this is our other P47. This is the Ps47d Razorback. This one is actually painted up as the Fiery Ginger 4, which, as you can see, has an absolute metric ton of Japanese flags on the side there. This is actually flown by Colonel Kirby, or it's painted as one flown by Colonel Neil E. Kirby, who was one of the most successful pilots of World War II. He got killed on obviously his final mission by a Ki-43. He had about, I think it was 23 or 24 fighter kills at the time. Here's one of the guns from the Fiery Ginger 4, as well as its tail, which has been recovered. The Razorback is obviously the one we just got in game recently. I think this would make a fun skin for it. But it is a gorgeous example of the P-47. Over here, this is a C-46 Commando. This is used for flying. Normally, it was used for flying the hump. That was its most common goal, which is flying over the Himalayas. So it'd fly from India to China to help them set up runways, to help them set up vehicles and get roadways cleared. So this is a very important aircraft as far as logistics goes for the Pacific Front. Over here we have an A-20. As you can see, the A-20, much like the B-26, was used on a number of missions. It was a very common aircraft to see usage. Each one of those is a mission. A-20 obviously is a wonderful aircraft in game. It's one of the faster aircraft at its battle rating. It's a very fun one to fly, and it's really cool to see this one here. As you can see, these guys are sitting about working on parts on a nice sandy beach in Japan, or near Japan, getting ready for the next Pacific run. If we come over here, we have a not a PBY Catalina. This is called the OA-10. This is the Air Force's version. It's not too different from a PBY-5A. Does have the landing gear and everything, but it was used primarily for rescue, which is why if we come over here, here's all of its rescue missions.
Ooh, there you go.
I believe the numbers are the number of people rescued on those missions, but I could be wrong. But it is a gorgeous aircraft. I do love the PBY. It's one of my most favorite seaplanes or boat planes in out there, because it is just absolutely gorgeous. Over here we have an ANM2. We have a Browning 50 cal and a Browning 30 cal. These are the main armaments of the U.S. during the war. We didn't really have much other than this. We kept it simple, kept it not too varied. Made things a lot easier maintenance-wise. This here is another centerpiece of the museum, much like the B-17 Memphis Bell. This B-29 right here goes by the name Boxcar. If I take you around it, you'll notice it's missing a lot of its turrets. That is because this is a silver plate, which means it's designed specifically for dropping atomic bombs. This specific one dropped the bomb on Nagasaki 75 years ago on August 9th. This plane it is partially, if not mostly, responsible for ending World War II in the Pacific. That makes it a very historically important aircraft, as well as a very unique aircraft, because there's only 2 silver plates remaining, and this is one of them.
It's massive. Look at it.
It is.
Yeah.
It is absolutely massive compared to any other aircraft in the World War II hangar. This is the largest. As you can see, from wingtip to fuselage is really impressive. I have to step really far back to get everything in frame.
Someone
Still
is
walking.
asking, is that the real Boxcar?
This is
Or
the
is
real
it
Boxcar.
There you
This
go.
is the actual Boxcar, which did drop the bomb on Nagasaki. Which is why it is so heavily modified from any other B-29 that you'll see, other than the Enola Gay.
Careful, Rocker, you're gonna get irradiated.
Yeah. Over here, if you all are familiar with the XA38 Grizzly and its automatic 75, this is the automatic 75 from the XA38. This is the actual cannon. As you can see, it's got these big old meaty rounds right here, designed to punch through tanks, bunkers, whatever you want to shoot at while flying around in the air. Ultimately, I would say... What was that?
Fist bump.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch anything, especially not on stream. We have Japanese and Italian armament over here. We have a Beretta 12.7 right here. Over here is a Type 92.77 and a Type 89.77. We also have a Type 99 20 millimeter, as well as a 12.7 Browning Type, which was basically a Japanese stolen design of a 50 cal. And then we have a HO 155 30 millimeter cannon and a HO 203 37 millimeter. So yeah, we got that there. If we come over here, we got a little cluster bomblet display of fragmentation bombs. So these would be used on soft targets. There's actually a picture out there I saw recently of a B-17 dropping about 100 something on a target over Italy of one of these, which is I would not want to be on the receiving end of that, let's just say.
Yeah.
Over here is our N1K1 JA, which is the George is what it's known by. This is there's not many N1K ones around, if I remember correctly. These were designed as high-altitude fighter aircraft. They were meant to chase down B-29s and other bombers. The B-29s could fly higher than it, though, so it did struggle at that. But it wasn't a very effective late war Japanese aircraft. We're coming up on the end here. We do have uniforms from every major country that participated in the war. We have the Mexican Air Force display, the Japanese, the Italians, the Luftwaffe, the Brazilians, the Royal Air Force, and of course, the best ones, the U.S. Army Air Force.
You got one for Brazil, but not Canada? Boo.
I already said the RAF, Bryce.
Is that, do we have the same one?
Brits, you damn Brits. It wasn't that far off, if I remember correctly. Obviously, as you can see right here, I'm coming up on an MXY7, which is the Oka. This is the trainer variant. It has a ski underneath, and it doesn't have a rocket engine. So they would just drop it and train you how to fly on that, so that you could then learn how to kamikaze something without just crashing into the water.
Jesus, really?
Yeah.
Kamikaze training.
Here is the Moonlight Serenade, which is the museum's P61. It's got its big chunky monkey radar nose here. It's got its 420s underneath there. It's got its 50 cal turret up there. And it is just a wonderful example. I always loved the green and black paint scheme. I would love to see that in game. But
yeah, some people were looking forward for this one, from what I see.
The P61 is gorgeous. And actually, no, I can't do that because I'm not working. Sometimes I've been able to get up into that room there and look down on the P61 from above. It's just a wonderful view. It is gorgeous. But that's the World War II hangar. I guess I could stop and do some Q&A for a minute or two if we wanted.
Yeah, sure. Or, well,
I will say,
as always, it's up to you. And well, I'm reading the chat right now. So if some of you guys want to ask questions relating to the planes or to the tour in general.
Yeah, sit down for 5 minutes. Give your legs a rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm good to keep walking.
Yeah, I know.
Unless
I'm just thinking of in about 3 hours. You won't.
Yeah.
Well, the big problem is I'm looking at time and we're an hour 45 in and I've only done one hangar. So.
Well, the thing is, we can always come back on another day, right? Like as we talked about before.
Yeah, I suppose.
If you want to do half.
It's definitely cleared up outside, which is nice.
Oh, that's good.
So I'm going to turn off the camera for a minute and take care of some stuff.
Sure.
All right, so if anyone has questions.
So if you guys have any questions about what we've seen before, make sure to, or even what's coming up, make sure to answer it. Or, sorry, ask it.
Avi asked, favorite aircraft in the World War II hangar? For Rokker and the
favorite
boys?
aircraft in the... I always like the P61 a lot. That's got to be my favorite outright. I mean, the Memphis Bell is cool, the B-29 is cool, but the P61 is just such a wonderful aircraft.
Cold War, yeah, they have, from what I understand, they have some Cold War and even beyond equipment. So,
yeah, this is just the very beginning. We've only seen a quarter of the museum. All right, so we've seen the World War I and World War II. I think it's a little more than a quarter number-wise. I think that we've seen about a third of the museum in terms of all the aircraft we have. But in terms of area covered, no, we've only seen one quarter of the museum. So there's still a lot to see.
Someone asked, how do they store the planes that aren't being presented?
We have a lot of but the museum has a lot of storage area. If I go outside, there's actually a set of 5 hangars called our restoration area and storage area, and you'll store planes out there. We also do disassemble a lot of the planes and then just store them disassembled and compact. But we have a number of storage area on the actual base side of things, the military base.
What else? I saw that the Royal Canadian Air Force mentioned in chat, but I missed it. No, I think it was when we were looking at the uniforms. That I think they
Yeah, it
were
was just
included in the
when we were
British.
looking at the uniforms. I will say, actually, the Hurricane we saw in the World War One and interwar period gallery, it was an RCAF Hurricane. It was Canadian built and used.
There you
go. Any other questions?
Pascosen says, I saw a dual engine plane in the hanging display. What was it?
In what display?
In the hanging. I think he means like it was hanging from the floor.
Oh, that would be. Here, I can walk back there real quick. I'm gonna go back there and show it on stream just to see what.
In the meanwhile, are there any aircraft cockpits that you like the most? Or are you allowed to look into?
Normally, there are a few aircraft cockpits you can go into. None of the actual aircraft, but we have separate cockpits that you can sit in. Those are all in the Cold War gallery. My favorite one is probably the F-111 they have, because it's an actual cockpit that was ejected during a crash. Since the F-111's cockpit ejects completely. I think that's pretty cool. Oh, I did actually, you know what? I did forget to show some stuff in the World War II hangar. So that is good that I came back here. So I'm assuming he's talking about this, right? This twin engine aircraft is a UC-78 Bobcat. It was just a small transport aircraft built by Cessna, and it was used for transporting, high value personnel and also, just general personnel transport. I also forgot to point out, obviously, World War II was the first time that we saw helicopters start getting used. So from the ceiling here, we have the R4 Hoverfly, as well as the R6 over here. And these were some of the first helicopters to see use during the war, or during anything, I should say.
Yeah, he was referring to that one. So there you go, Pascosen.
There we go. So this is the R6 Hoverfly. These are both called the Hoverfly, both by Sikorsky. First helicopters used by the U.S. side, at least. Yeah. So that's the World War II hangar done. I think I will stop the video now and begin the trek to the